morning, Bookless classroom. How are you? This is Dr. Annette Feravich. I have for my little throat some real honey water. Look at that. Look at the way it separates. Isn't that just delicious looking? I don't know. I think it is. I think it does look like, look at that liquid gold. Delish. So let's taste it now with some actual honey. So I've got my vanilla. You know, I know you guys care. My French vanilla, my Bangles spice. Huh. It's got a tang to it. January 22nd, 302. Day 302, January 22nd. We won't be here for my sister Rhonda's birthday. I have given up on the love connection until I know otherwise, no further what's been going on. It's pretty good. I stirred it up so that the honey was all mixed in there. The honey was old and kind of, but it was fine because it was still liquid, the stuff I put in there. It was fine. It dissolved really well in my hot water. Even though it's not really hot. So hopefully that honey will coat my throat. We'll see. All right. Let's get to our Reader's Digest. 10 million Keglers can't be wrong. Do you know what a Kegler is? I didn't. 10 million Keglers can't be wrong. What's a Kegler? I think it was a political party. They helped the poor people. This is condensed from Esquire by Paul W. Kearney. Back off. The pastime of bowling, which might be called our national indoor game, has about 10 million regular participants throughout the country. The annual meeting of the American Bowling Congress last year attracted to Indianapolis 15,000 contestants from 387 cities and towns, all paying their own railroad fares, hotel bills, and entrance fees. Sounds like elitists, not Keglers. 25 years ago, perhaps, the lusty art of kegling smelled too strongly of cigar smoke and beer to be among the politer pastimes. But today, chauffeur-driven cars wait for their ladies outside the recreation parlors. Alleys are overcrowded in girls' schools like Vassar, and hundreds of churches and top-flight country clubs. In Hollywood, alleys have been installed on many production lots, while numerous stars have private courts in their homes. In short, the whole social complexion of the game has changed during its widespread revival of the past 5 years. Here's the real tip-off on the popularity of kegling. It costs only 20 or 25 cents a game, hence anybody can afford to play. It is likewise a game in which brawn is unimportant. You will find thousands of bowlers who physically range from spindly-legged high school freshmen to soft-muscled old ladies in the 70s. Indeed, Buffalo boasts of a woman over 80 who bowls regularly once a week. Last January, 5 boys from the New York Guild for the Jewish Blind competed against a team of sighted lads. The only assistance accorded the sightless was a special handrail to guide their approach. Yet they lost only by the close margin of 16 pins, 654 to 670. In this match, any pins left after the first ball were called out by number, and the bowler directed his second ball accordingly. Women are taking a universal interest in the game. A recent women's tournament in St. Louis saw 130 teams competing from that single city. In New York, nearly 5,000 women attended a free course of instruction offered by a local newspaper. Chicago, the capital of the bowling world, had 7,200 competitors in its 8th annual feminine tournament in 1935. One of that number, 14-year-old Mary Jane Hubert, who 5 years ago was completely paralyzed, shot a 209 in her opening game. Bowling usually implies the big pin game, but on the same alleys there are played a dozen small pin games. Among them are duck pins, Babe Ruth's pet game, which uses a small, squatty variety of the regulation pin and a small ball without finger holes, and candle pins, tall, skinny pins for which a 6-inch ball is used. The parent sport, American 10 pins, is our own development of the game of 9 pins, which has been traced back prior to 1200 AD. A logical offspring of the older game of the lawn bowls, the game Sir Frederick Drake refused to leave until completed, despite the courier's message that the Spanish Armada was in sight. And this is the game which the early Dutch and English settlers brought to the colonies to be played so generally that the austere Puritans barred it by law around the middle of the 17th century. That prohibition spawned the form of pastime which we now know. Some enthusiasts, noting that the injunction forbade 9 pins, blandly added a 10th pin to the setup and neatly circumvented the law. The game has gone a long, long way from the days of clay alley beds and stone balls. Modern alleys, expertly fashioned of edge-grained virgin white rock maple and Georgia pine, aged and treated 200 years before laying. How they know? What? Why? Cost around $3,000 the pair. Good pins guaranteed to last 1,000 games are made of the finest maple. Balls, once wooden, are now almost exclusively made of composition materials. And since every real bowler owns his own ball, one of the most expensive barometers of the sudden rise of bowling is the fact that numerous credit jewelry houses have lately added bowling balls to their merchandise list. I bought my bowling ball from a jewelry store. One such Detroit concern sold $22,000 worth of balls last season. The dream of every Kegler is to roll the perfect score of 300, every pin down on every ball rolled. For this, the American Bowling Congress gives a medal. An average of 200 perfect score medals are awarded each year. Perhaps 300 more perfect games are rolled under conditions not sanctioned for medal credit. And the greatest number of medals held by any individual bowler is 8. These belong to Harry Hank Marino of Milwaukee, whose record has been hung up over a 25-year period. Unquestionably, he has rolled as many more perfect games in practice. In little over half that time, a matronly, white-haired woman of Pueblo, Colorado, Mrs. Floretta McCutcheon, has rolled 10 perfect games. Bowling can be enjoyed with less proficiency than almost any other game. Skill is involved, of course, but not the exacting skill which turns so many sports into embarrassing misery for the novice. Being all inclusive, bowling is easily the most sociable of all games. Father and son tournaments are even more popular on the alleys than on the golf links, and husband and wife can bowl together with infinitely less risk of divorce than they are exposed to at golf. But the backbone of the sport is the teams and leagues from offices and factories which have bowled 2 or 3 evenings a week for years. Since anybody from the boss to the office boy is eligible on equal grounds, most leading concerns in the country foster bowling as the ideal breeder of improved industrial relations. Twice weekly, for instance, the Bell Laboratories in New York take over 24 alleys. In one establishment in Newark, New Jersey, the Prudential Insurance Company has 4,000 employee bowlers. In various cities, the Chrysler Corporation estimates 5,000, and so on. Over 150 corporations, including U.S. Steel, have installed their own alleys. One of the first things John D. Rockefeller Jr., himself a bowler, did in Pueblo after the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company's notorious labor difficulties some years back was to introduce bowling. And today, in all Rockefeller interests, including the Riverside Church in New York, the game rates high. If you've never bowled, stop in some alley and watch the old hands perform. They pick up a ball by its finger holes, balance it in a moment, then swing it in an arm-length arc, making a final genuflection as the ball goes forward. How sweetly it hugs the boards as it hunts down the 60-foot stretch. How satisfying the crash of timber as 30 pounds of polished lumber are swept helter-skelter into the pit. It isn't so simple as it looks, but once you've tried it yourself and seen a couple of sturdy pins clunk against each other, then topple out of sight, you've gotten the taste of blood that will never be completely satiated. Although bowling is good exercise, giving the abdominal muscles a much needed workout, it isn't physically violent. You'll sleep like a top after 3 or 4 games, but there is no danger of overdoing it. Your thumb will get sore from the friction of the finger grip before you can bowl too long for your own good. This is one reason why physical directors are placing emphasis on bowling in high schools. In many schools, faculty members get out on the alleys with their pupils, and the obvious virtue of it is that they are all enjoying a game which takes a lot of them off the spectators' benches and puts them on the playing floor, thus meeting the criticism once aimed at athletes in general: the athlete competes and grows stronger, the weakling looks on and grows weaker. That's a quote. Psychiatrists recommend bowling for adults as a mental relaxation, entirely beyond the appeal of the game as a game. It has something which we who live under the increasing pressure of civilization have been mutely crying for: an easy outlet for pent-up emotions. For bowling permits the most straight-laced citizen to unbend long enough to blast into utter confusion a regimented array of 10 neatly arranged objects to the cheers of his compatriots. At the small price of a quarter, you can enjoy the civilized man's last chance to make a shambles and a hell of a racket without apologizing to a soul. How about that? I'm going to go and read the little quip that they have in Reader's Digest that fill up their pages, right? So if a story ends short, they fill up the page so that they could start a story on a new page. The good old days when this is called patter. The good old days when only one man in Europe thought he was Napoleon. That's from the Washington Post. Intuition, the strange instinct that tells a woman she is right whether she is or not. That's from the Methodist Recorder. When some men discharge an obligation, you can hear the report for miles around. That's from Mark Twain. Epitaph. He walked on the suicide of the road. An elderly Beacon butler claims he's serving his third degeneration, from the Boston Transcript. People who have half an hour to spare usually spend it with somebody who hasn't. Indianapolis News. Dignity is one thing that can't be preserved in alcohol. Grammy and Sarah Lorimer. The musicians who invented swing ought to. Oh my gosh! I read that the first time and I didn't get it! I am not going to read it again. That is by O.O. McIntyre. Sales resistance, the triumph of mind over Sales resistance, the triumph of mind over patter. What the new models need is shatterproof glass behind the driver's seat. That child has plenty of willpower, but even more won't power. London Mail. The first law of repartee, better never than late. Okay, that's our Reader's Digest, still from March 1983. We got through another article on our 3 days. So 3 articles this week we got through as our new segment in our Bookless classroom. Also, note that there is a new segment in our early birds exercising. We are exercising and coming up after our conversations on common things. We are going to do art. So those are a couple things to look forward to. All right. And here in Bookless, as I said, we are doing the Reader's Digest as a new segment. Love it. Nothing new for books. Oh, except for the new book that's coming up, which is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. I think I need to get that Flowers in the Attic book again, although it's so disturbing, but it's so spot on. You know, if you looked at the mentality of people sending kids to boarding school, for example, right? And in particular, just a constant beating of normal people's head against the wall. What is that? What was that book that I read? Four Winds, I think it was called. The Four Winds, something like that. Oh my gosh. It just is a perfect picture of the struggle that people go through, and one on top of another. And you really do have a feeling of is there any justice? Right? I could really taste that honey. Really, it does work. I think it does work. I'll try it again. And it's warm tea as well. So it's really good. Okay. Let's get to our PowerPoint. And where were we so that we can avoid repeating ourselves? Well, not there. We were past there. We know that. Ancient Thebes. I went and I looked at some others sites. Let's take a look at that actually. We might as well. That actually, I'm going to spend a little bit more time going into, because I don't have that many more slides, but the idea was to go into some of these other areas. So let's just open up. So here, this was so interesting here. So this morning I was going through more and more, and there we are in the Sinai Peninsula. And that should be the Red Sea then. But okay. Why I'm not always getting that, it's just like a big giant brain fart. Yeah, that would be the Red Sea. Okay. So, and this is St. Catherine's Monastery, which is where? Well, in South Sinai, in Egypt. No, the Sudan. No, Egypt. Okay. So here you could see all the sites in Egypt. The ones in reds are actual sites. The ones in blue are proposed sites. Okay? So St. Catherine, but then when I went and I looked at this, so, okay, so this is, worth some of our energy. But I mean, it sure doesn't look very real, does it? I mean, you sure do have, and this is, all right, and so this is considered a burning bush, but what was, and then sort of, I would have to say in typical Catholic fashion, they called it, right? I called it dibs. It's like what Seth Meyer says on A Closer Look. Dibs, right? So basically that's what they said about Greenland and Venezuela. And if all this is true, well, then it's not funny. But you do kind of wish it's not true, and then it would just be for some sense of humor, I suppose. But this is proclaimed to be the place where he met Zephora, his wife. Okay. But that is, so as you go down here in St. Catherine, you get the sort of the lay of the land of what this is all about, and also incorporate much of what we have talked about through the time here or some of what we've talked about here in the time that we've been in the classroom. So in mentioning some things, so here is St. Catherine's Monastery in 1852, and doesn't look a lot different in 1968. That's amazing, right? Okay. And when you get down here, I end up finding out where's the name? that this is where they found this Codex Sinaiticus. And it was found by, come on, why isn't the extra name here? Konstantin von Tischendorf. This is all information that we actually covered in when we talked about those 3 2-hour videos about the Bible. And I never remember what the names of those are. But I could probably find out in a short time. No. Oh. Yeah, no, I'm not going to be able to figure it out. I thought that I could. But there are 3 gosh, I don't know. Begins with, I don't know. Oh, I'm so mad. I ask them and then I remember, and I know that they're also, it doesn't even matter. Let's keep going. This is important though, that I watched those 3 documentaries on the Bible, and they go back to back, and I've talked about them here before. Well, the Protestants don't believe any of this, because the very first transcript of the Bible was from, we had to count on basically Catholics to give us that version of the Bible, a good version of the Bible, and they didn't. So it was out there for like 6 months and then gone and then replaced. But all these finds, it's so miraculous how this Tischendorf comes in there and finds the oldest copy of the Bible just laying around in a basket. And this doesn't give you any more in-depth to Tischendorf about this either. So all of this skepticism of mine, because I know that there is technology, right? I mean, for all I know, I could be the last Christian/Catholic, and they're debating on whether or not they need to get rid of me because I'm filled with the evil force of those people. And there was a lot of evil they did in the right in the name of peace, right in front of these statues. So let's go on, and you really get a feeling from all of this that there is really no appreciation here in the United States. I mean, that's extraordinary right there. There's just not a lot of appreciation in the United States for those artifacts. Here we were started to talk about that this artifact from Rockefeller ended up in our museum. I think the Met, so the Metropolitan whatever Museum. And how that happened, as it was surrounded by all kinds of mystery and suspicion called the Kurna disaster. And this seems to be a good website. Step with your sign me up there. But I didn't want to go through the whole website and read all of this, right? So, but there they are, the human-headed winged bulls from Sargon II's palace in Der Sharkin, modern Khorsabad, it looks like at the Louvre. Would that be at the Louvre? That's what it looks like. And here, this young man stands in front of another. It's called Oriental or Assyrian limestone, Neo-Assyrian period, similar kind of winged, I don't know, pharaoh, if you want to say that, right? Author at Lamassu from Dershaken, University of Chicago, Oriental Institute. And look at that. So this limestone is from 721 to 705 BC. So it clearly is a hot commodity, what we're finding. And there are ways to get in there and get it, right? There are ways to get in there and get it that are peaceful ways where the whole universe, where the whole world, Earth, planet Earth, is getting to work together to make sure without disproportionately giving homage to. I mean, I do believe that people have to think about that, right? I do believe, I said in the early birds class, does it bring you a little bit of concern when you see other people's shrines? Does that make you a little bit concerned? Right? Would you walk into another person's shrine? Would you pray at somebody else's shrine, at a Buddhist shrine, at a Shinto shrine? And this I found out in the wee hours of the morning, so not like 100% sure to have matched those pictures with the one that I collected there, but I think that's in Hiroshima. I saw another picture. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the picture I have. So I called it up. And sure enough, looks exactly like the picture that I had. Did you know that? So we've used this picture that there was a Shinto shrine. Looks like it's on the World Heritage List that was in Hiroshima. Let's look at that because we've got it right here. So here we are at the beginnings of the list. And I was looking at, well, yeah, I went back to Egypt. So let's look in Japan and tell me that's not the same thing. So let me be sure here. Oh, no. No, they're not saying anything about... Oh, no, here it is, right here. Duh. In Hiroshima. And look at how gorgeous that is. I've got to capture that picture as another one. So how about that? Right? All right, so let's get back to our, I also am up here showing you also the sites as well. All right, so this is the main site that I've been using, which is Wikipedia. And again, it is concerning whether or not people are hacking into these heritage sites and putting pictures there. I do feel like that's been happening, that all of a sudden something ends up getting what do you call it when it gets filled up, right? All of a sudden it gets filled up with these pictures, and right, and people would think that would be funny. You would get to be world famous because I whatever have a big goose egg out there. So this is where I went to the World Heritage Sites, and again, this has been and so I planned on at the end of this taking a look at, now we've already looked at this Kurna disaster, right, through this article here, and talked about it a little bit yesterday, but understanding that these were antiquities that were lost in this disaster, but somehow that one for Rockefeller made it out of there. And I don't know what these are over here floating around, all kinds of places. Like Spain, all kinds of places in Europe and America. Heritage sites in India, I didn't put a lot there in the rest of the PowerPoint. I mean, I said this is the reason why, if you ask me. Look at that. Buddhist cave monuments dating back to about the 2nd century to about 480 CE. This is a cave temple, a Hindu temple. This is Agra Fort. Well, you can read that down there, right? Yeah, you can read that. I'm just going through there's the Taj Mahal. I did not see in Japan or in China or anywhere else in these World Heritage Sites that had this much that was worth saving. Look at that. Did I pass it? No, not that one. This one? They didn't call it that, though. So a group of Hindu monuments. Sundarban Tiger Reserve in West Bengal, India. Alpine meadows in the Himalayas. One of the, what did we call those? Steepas? They don't have a lot of information when you're looking at the big picture, unfortunately. These are all in India. If you go to this, I don't know if they have more pictures, they don't, and look at these railways that they are preserving all as part of these bridges and railway systems, they're incredible. They're just incredible. And in our cities, we get to look at something beautiful. Look at that. I mean, I just don't know what could possibly give a city more prestige than buildings that looked like that. and then to preserve the actual earth, the actual places. I mean, what is this with all that language down there? Amazing. And that looks like it's all hidden underground, doesn't it? Look at that. What is that? Stupa. A stupa, right? Humanyan's tomb. I mean, just one incredible. Here's where I was looking at the different railways here. Look at that. That they're preserving. How cute is that? And this is a train station. And then here we are in Western Ghats. The Western Ghat is a mountain range that runs along the western coast of the Indian subcontinent. It is covered with montane forest. The area is a biodiversity hotspot and home to endangered species such as the Bengal tiger, lion-tailed macaque, right? Nilgiri tar and the Nilgiri langur. In terms of evolutionary history, this area is important. Oh, and look at that there. All right, so that's the city that it's in. Where was that we were looking that it was all underground? Right here. Rankivav, the Queen's Stepwell. The finest examples of a step well, an elaborate type of well where groundwater is accessed through several levels of stairs, was constructed in the 11th century. This is, and then Great Himalayan National Park. Buddhist ancient higher learning institution. I mean, oh my gosh. Mesmerizing view of temple number 3 at archaeological site of Nalanda, Mahavihara. Just wow. Samiti Lake. I mean, you know, a modern concrete building, a pond in front. Okay. We see a lot of those, right? But not a lot of bridges that look like that are in use. Not a lot of our high courts that look like that. The Palace of Winds in Jaipur. Look at that. What's the matter? They're not gargoyles? Not evil looking creatures from Demon Land? All right, so that was one of them. So we kind of, as a lot of times we start backwards with this stuff. I wonder why this is on there, right? A transnational site shared with Argentina, Belgium, France, Germany, Switzerland, and Japan encompasses 17 works of Franco-Swiss architecture. Le Corbusier Le Corbusier was an important representative of the 20th century modernist movement, which introduced new architectural technique to meet the needs of the changing society. Yeah, well, not anything compared. Looks like STEM researchers looks like we need to put scientists in those buildings. This is a Harappan city. So the Harappan civilization in our Indus Valley that we talked about here, they have got a city, the remains of a city in India. It is one of the 5 largest Harappan sites and most prominent archaeological sites in India. Look at that. How about that? A prayer hall. Who even knows what that is? Because I can't even read their language. Look at that. We would have made that into a golf course. We would have plowed down those buildings and made it into a golf course. All right, maybe that one's a little bit. What? What? Okay, so you get the gist of what we're up to. All right, and then let's go through that. So Wikipedia, this was a cute little site where it went through in this little cute little short video, the list of the oldest UNESCO World Heritage Sites, the pyramids in Egypt, that pyramid specifically, Skara Brae in Scotland, Newgrange, Ireland, Taraxen templates in Malta, Gigantica in Malta. No, I found these in Malta to be really unbelievable. I mean, those are what? It's a temple complex consisting of 2 structures. Animal bones were discovered at the site, suggesting communal rituals and feasting. Built in Scotland in 3800 BC. It seems to me like, I don't know. I feel like my son took a picture of that. I just find that astounding. So yeah. And then number 1 is our very first one that started the whole thing, is this, and it's a great picture as well. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. So really, really a cool website. I'm going to get that one out of here now. And then there was this Tel Al Caramel, which I was looking into, and I don't know why I was looking into it. Because they have old stones here, but I don't know. These predate the famous Tower of Jericho by roughly 2,000 years in this Tel Caramel. But it's not... in the World Heritage Sites, listed in the World Heritage Sites, so I don't know exactly why I was looking into this. It's a mystery to me. But it looks very similar to World Heritage Sites, and also understanding that some of the sites are completely decimated, that what they're finding there is just rubble, all right? So it's kind of interesting. Where did the rubble come from? Before or after some American response? I don't mean to be anti-American, but I'm quite certain that a lot of people do. Okay, and then here we were talking yesterday about the Cambrian explosion. and where it was located. And then I was doing a comparison to some of the other world's natural properties, but didn't find them. I mean, there were some in China that were the natural properties, but as far as what was built, man-made, India had it by a long shot. I didn't put this Bible passage in there, but we'll get to it. All right, so let's get to our PowerPoint. And finish this up. So Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan is, I think that I found the, so we talked about this. Nope. But yeah, I didn't, I think I read Mohenjo-Daro to you, and then I picked up a map. I got a map, and now I don't have the map. Yeah, now I don't have the map. Okay. And I did read this, and you can find that on the map. All right, so World Heritage Site Indus Valley in, oh, did I do the wrong one? Yeah, this is in Pakistan. This is in Iraq. Ugh. So, and this would be, so these are the ziggurats. Used to change automatically. No, it doesn't. Bothers me. Okay, there we go. So let's take a look at that, though. I want to take a look at that to make sure that I have that right. So we're going to go into Iraq. Oh, here this is. Now this doesn't necessarily look exactly like what I have there. But that's what they did to the ziggurat, isn't it? To the original ziggurat. That's the picture that we see now of that ziggurat compared to the old version of it. So these are, oh, there's the marshlands. But it says here that there are multiple sites, and unfortunately, you don't really have. Oh, I know. And then so then what I went to was a. And isn't that interesting? Awar. I mean, some of these names really do seem like they're like. I'm very skeptical of some of the information I am now finding. So you know, on the internet for people who just really want to, not necessarily get things right. Okay, but that's what I wanted to do was look at our site. There we go. So here's where you end up with other pictures. And here's what the new ziggurat looked like. So we've seen this picture, right? But what did the old ziggurat look like? Like that. There's our old ziggurat. So isn't that interesting? And when one of the things they've got all of the information here except for like tell me when the picture was taken. A lot of times we have that, but a lot of times it's anybody's guess, right? And can you tell me a little bit of what we're looking at there? Are those railroad tracks? That's what that looks like, right? But that to me is what the ziggurat used to look like. This to me is what we see often in the pictures. So all of this then does sort of scream the question about how much interference has there been in But see, then you look at the authors of these, and I do believe, look at this. A view of a settlement. The Urudu site. And that was one of the oldest sites that dated prior to Babylon. I think I just read that. So the marshland also is part of this World Heritage Site. There it is. We're not exactly in the same site, but doesn't that just, but close to it, doesn't it just sort of make you think of the Sea of Galilee? And there are the marshes. Okay, so that is Awar of southern Iraq. I should probably put that in the name so that I do. Oh, I do have it. It's actually several sites in Iraq. Okay, now that I've slowed this down to a bore, the Awar, also known as Iraqi marshlands, is made up of 7 components: 3 archaeological sites and 4 wetland marsh areas in southern Iraq. The cities of Uruk, and Tel Eridu archaeological sites forms part of the remains of the Sumerian cities and settlements that developed in southern Mesopotamia between the 4th and 3rd millennium BC in the marshy delta of the Tigris and Euphrates. And I think I might have read this the other day. I'm being a little redundant, but that, so you're talking about 3000 to 4000 BC. The World Heritage Site, Heart of Neolithic Orkney Islands, Scotland. This is the one we saw on the little video there, and I got those two from, I got a couple of them from her little video. So the Heart of Neolithic Orkney is a group of Neolithic monuments on the mainland of Orkney Island, Scotland. It consists of 4 sites: Mayhow, a chambered cairn and passage grave; standing stones of Stennis, the 4 remaining megaliths of a henge. So like a Stonehenge, they had a henge as well. So a henge has something to do with archaeology in the solar system, which is basically what they're saying. Skara Brae, a cluster of 8 houses making up Northern Europe's best preserved Neolithic valley. You can so you could see, you saw, and I'm taking it that this may be a picture from the book, right here from a book. But there to the right, that building right there that you see there, that group of stones, you can see that there's an entryway into the house. So that little video was showing you, I knew I shouldn't have then, so there it is. There is the little home. So you can see in the big picture where they are going down into that little hut, stone home. So how many people, the monasteries are built into the cliffs and these homes are built underground. It really does look like it's almost like a Middle Earth kind of thing going on here, don't you think? I mean, sometimes it is like that, don't you think? A little bit. UNESCO proclaimed these sites as a World Heritage Site in 1999. So many different sites, and that often is what happens because you've got a theme going on here. This is in Fars, Iran. This is the Pasargadae. Was the first dynastic capital of the I know I've said that word before. Achaemenid Empire. Achaemenid. I think it's Achaemenid. I don't think that's it. Empire. Founded by the Cyrus. Cyrus. All right, can we start over? And I'm going to get it right. Pasargadae was the first dynastic capital of the Achaemenid Empire, founded by Cyrus the Great in the 6th century BC in the Fars province of Iran. It is an archaeological site that includes not only a garden, but also the tomb of Cyrus, palaces, and a fortress. Consistently divided into 4 sectors, these gardens use water for irrigation and ornamentation, symbolizing Eden and the Zoroastrian elements of sky, earth, water, and plants. The garden at Pasargadae is recognized as the earliest known example and the prototype for the classic Persian garden design. It introduced the use of dressed stone, water channels, and a formal geometric layout. How about that beauty? And there is Cyrus the Great's tomb as part of this. So this is Persepolis, I started to say it right, which is also in Fars, Iran as well. And so these are, again, some of the oldest sites. Persepolis, the capital of Achaemenid, I'm saying that right, Empire, was conceived by Darius I in 518 BC. Remember the conversation I had with AI? I know this is getting slow and boring. Sorry, I wish I could condense some of these. But when it's new information for me, it's much more slower producing this for you. But remember, this is the era that we're in. So I started looking at these sites with some connections being made, but started looking at these sites, starting with the salt, right? From Poland, from the Reader's Digest, and then asking AI to give me some of these sites that were related to the era, the Achaemenid Empire era of Cyrus the Great and his sons, right? That were in the World Heritage sites, that were listed in the World Heritage sites. The terrace served as the foundation for an elaborate palace complex where the King of Kings erected grandiose structures influenced by Mesopotamian design. The earliest remains of the Persepolis date back to 515 BC. The city, acting as a major center for the empire, housed a palace complex and citadel designed to serve as the focal point for governance and ceremonial activities. This is the Bruna Boyne in Newgrange, Ireland. This also was on the list put up there by whoever put up that short little video here. So it was the next one on the list. Newgrange, Ireland. It is an ancient temple built by a Neolithic farming community as a place of astrological, spiritual, religious, and ceremonial importance where dignitaries were laid to rest. And so that's, again, you're looking, look up, you see grass up there. So these are archaeological discoveries that were underground, right? So you really want to make sure that you've got all the people on board. Oh, that's not supposed to be there. Okay. All right. And so I I don't know. Did we get to this one already too? And did I say that, make that comment about that looking like the Silver Dome, right? Like I feel like I've touched that before. I feel like I've seen it. It's so astronomical. It's just really hard to conceive how big and round that is. The World Heritage Property of Bruna Boyne is Ireland's richest archaeological landscape and is situated within a bend in the River Boyne. Bruna Boyne is famous for the spectacular prehistoric passage tombs of Noth, Newgrange, and Douth, which were built circa 3200 BC. Brú na Bóinne is also an important archaeastronomical site. Several of the passage tombs are aligned with the winter solstice and equinoxes. And there is one of the underground sites in 1932. So we saw that here. Right here. I don't think I put this site, and I should have, because I have that picture from this site. So that's pretty amazing. Okay, so these are the things that they're doing then to preserve that land and that site. They have to clearly do some digging, but it does look like the digging is really unearthing some things of magnificent beauty. Now this is just natural beauty is all, and I started talking about this, the Lena pillars in Yakutia, Siberia, which is in Russia, and I had no idea, whoopsie, that the Cambrian explosion was located. I mean, I'm sure I was told that before, but I just never saw pictures. I don't ever remember, because at Discovery Institute, we really delved into the Cambrian explosion to find out that it really didn't amount to a whole lot. Even if you were to say and agree with all of the levels of that explosion. Let me see if I have it. No. I don't have that picture. I do have some of the pictures in the book that I have over there, but I had a lot of books from Discovery Institute where we really did delve into, and a lot of those pictures, which would be on my hard drive, but really do detail a little bit better the different breakdown in that Cambrian explosion. But all of it is in cartoon. So, you know I'm looking for it. Because if it's here, and it should be, I actually can find it within just a couple seconds. Or 1 minute. Did you already start the timer? You should have. Because I'm almost done. Okay. Bing. Bing, bing. Let's take a look at that. I'll look at that in the preview, I think. I thought it looked in here, but you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, it probably doesn't. And I thought that you guys were seeing all this exchange and you're not. Okay, no, I cannot find it. I plugged in my other hard drives and I cannot find it on my other hard drives. But I am going to be looking for it a little more diligently. There we go. I had to make sure that it just unplugged. All right, so let's take a look at some of these other pictures that I have here of this. This is just so extraordinary. That's where it's located. So if you can look at that a little bit more closely, look at how far north you're talking about and how far east. That's Mongolia and China, right? And China is well, south, but also west of that. And we're talking east. You are talking, I can't even, can you imagine the frigid zone you're talking about here with that water lapping up? And there's a second view of it where you're seeing the face of it a little bit more clearly. That second picture there, or actually the third picture there, shows you how it runs down the coast. And how beautiful is that, right? Running down the coast here. And then the last picture that I have here is sort of from behind and running down the coast. And so you can see in this last picture, it's not very deep. So that water just pulls away, but it's just the ridge. I mean, and that's where the Cambrian explosion is. No wonder we don't know more about it. Oh my gosh. But there were ships and pictures where ships were coming down. And can you imagine the majesty of seeing that from, like, you know, a riverboat when you're low? No. And then the last city that we have is Babylon. And in this, I mean, look at the rubble. Look at the rubble of Babylon up at the top there. That's Carchemish, which we've talked about. We've looked at all of these that are related to Babylon. This was taken from Babylon. There's the gate of Ishtar, Carchemish, and the ruins of Babylon. And then I'll take you to that quote which is from Isaiah, and here are all the quotes. Babylon will never be inhabited again. It will remain empty for generation after generation. Nomads will refuse to camp there, and shepherds will not bed down their sheep. Jeremiah 51:37, chapter 51, verse 37. Babylon will be a heap of ruins, a jaunt of jackals, an object of horror and scorn, a place where no one lives. Now, the closest city next to it is no, that's not it, because that's in Cairo. There is a city outside. of where the Babylon ruins are. It's called Al Hilah. Al Hilah. And it's 5 miles outside of Babylon, but they don't say that it's annexed Babylon. It incorporates Babylon. It's partly on Babylon's site. The majority of the, or some of the city. No, it's 5 miles from Babylon. And you shall say, just so shall Babylon sink down and not rise again because of the calamity that I am going to bring upon her, and they will become exhausted. And then Revelations chapter 18, this chapter speaks of Babylon's complete downfall, become a dwelling for demons and unclean spirits, emphasizing its permanent ruin in the end times. Let's ask one more question. I didn't spell that right. Okay, making sure you're seeing it. You are. Okay. Is this where I found the tell of whatever? Huh. I don't think so. Visitors can see natural salt formations in the area, including one famously nicknamed Lot's wife. Wow. Wow. All right. I think we've gotten through everything as far as our 300 days. We went extra long today, but we knew that that was going to happen with gabbiness and with constant repetition. I hope you didn't mind. I don't think so. I did kind of, I mean, I was slow. It was slow going, but I hope I gave you a lot of stuff that you really find interesting. There are clearly so many sites there that are part of that World Heritage Conservation. World Heritage, UNESCO, World Conservation. Look at all of those. So starting there in Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean. I looked at Cuba. Look at this. What? What? Alejandro de Humboldt National Park. Cienfuegos Cathedral. Nuestra Señora de la Soledad Church. So lots and lots of Catholics. School of Music, part of the National Arts Program. Oh, something we don't have. So yeah, some really spectacular sites, all part of this, not some. These are all spectacular sites. Let's see what's in North Korea. Oh my goodness. Well, that's stunning. Okay, well, we could do this all day long, as you can see. And I hope that you do spend some of your time looking at a few more. Oh my gosh, that's right. In Cambodia, you've got the pyramid there. That's all you get for a picture? Somebody doesn't like you. Wow. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me here on day 302. It is January 22nd. We will be back here in the classroom at 12:30 looking at our next, I think, chapter. I think we finished a chapter in Black Looks. We are on day 19. Thanks so much for joining me here in the Bookless classroom, where we are talking a lot about history. And, you know, that kind of stuff right there, that really makes me proud of the people, that's for sure. And how the people can come together in such a wonderful way. And, you know, that just, I mean, I don't know what to say about that Goldman Sachs guy in Canada who's contemplating giving Trump $1 billion for his peace. $1 billion gives you lifetime entrance into his, is that what you believe? Into his peace accord or whatever? Is that what you believe? $1 billion? You're contemplating it? Because it's falling out of your butt and you don't see a better place for it? I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. But I see that UNESCO is doing what they're supposed to be doing, it seems to me. And all we're looking for is more competition. Thanks for joining me here in the classroom, where we have finished our 3 days on for this week for the Bookless classroom. I'll see you in a few in our reading room. Thanks a lot.